Mr. Ballantyne is recognized to speak on the amendment.
All right, colleagues, I'm going to try to bring it back to a little statesman-like stuff here. Let's have an honest and thorough debate as we can without going after the inconsistencies and some of those things that we see. It's a shame that politics has gotten to that point, not just in our country, but certainly here statewide. I don't plan to be here long. This is one of several amendments, so it's going to be kind of the same concept. And I do want to start out by, I do want to applaud Mr. Pace for not only submitting the amendment, but having a conversation with me and letting me know what he was thinking about doing. That is a part of the process. And Ms. Cromer did attend several of the higher education hearings that we had, and so I appreciate that. Those of y'all that have been here a while know that I've served on every committee but Judiciary, and that took an interesting turn to get to Ways and Means, and I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse, because being on Ways and Means is much like being an elected official where you are back home, but just in a different way. You've got to say no sometimes. And so when it comes to the budget, we have to have discussions where we have to say no a lot of times. And we're all, as you heard the speaker moments ago say, we're big boys and girls, and so we have to make some tough decisions. And so I think each and every one of us are aware how important roads are in our state and to our constituents, and I think each and every one of us would say they can't get done fast enough. That being said, I do want to applaud the Department of Transportation for the huge amount of work that they've been able to do. It might not be in every particular county. I think there are projects in every county. Certainly not done as fast as we would like or our constituents like, but they are doing great work. Since 2017, those of y'all that were here where we had the opportunity to vote to give money to help DOT do a lot of projects, our department has spent almost $4 billion on roads and bridges. And those of y'all back then, remember, there were a lot of people that said, no, we don't want to spend more money. Well, then they finally figured out, you know what, maybe more money isn't bad because it's going to go to roads and bridges. So we've invested $4 billion since then. This year, y'all heard the authors of the amendment. They agreed. At DOT, they asked for $200 million. It's a part of their, it was a 10-year plan, but they've escalated up. They want to do it in 5 years. So the plan is to give them $200 million each year for the next 5 years. And you've heard our governor talk about this being a handshake state. That's what we are as elected officials. DOT knows that while it might show up in the non-recurring budget, it is our intent here in the General Assembly to fund that each and every year for the next 5 years. Now, like I said, I haven't been on Ways and Means long, but when I got on there, I learned a little bit more than I had. I thought I knew how the process worked, but I'm man enough to admit that there was a lot I did not know. There's stuff today that I still don't know. We're all learning. One thing that I thought is if you just give somebody more money, they can figure out how to get it done. They can get more widgets, more people, more things, this, that, and the other. That's not how it works, particularly with our roads. We've got engineers involved. We've got a litany of everybody that is involved on all these projects. Were we to give them more money, although it sounds good and we can go back home and tell our constituents we gave them more money, they would not see more pylons on the side of the road. They would not see more work getting done. DOT asked for $200 million. That's what we gave them. Now let me talk a little bit about tuition mitigation to make sure everybody's up to speed on what we're doing here. And I would disagree with some of the comments you heard. While this, obviously Clemson is a 4-year institution, we help out with tuition in many ways for all the colleges and institutions, public in the state, whether it be through tuition mitigation, scholarship, gifts, grants, tuitions, etc. Y'all, this year we are down in funding tuition mitigation. Again, we had an enormous amount of requests. We didn't give them what they want. We gave them what we could, and we asked them to, again, for the 6th year in a row, to freeze tuition on our students and our families in this environment that are working hard to make ends meet. And so by doing that, we spent less than 10% of the funds that we have in recurring dollars right now to make this possible. And in this particular example, it turns out it's $10 million going to Clemson. Y'all, if you weren't here for 2008 and 2012, consider yourself lucky because we had budget cuts back then. And we cut higher ed tremendously. For 4 straight years, we cut, to the tune of 50% less than what we gave them when we were here earlier in 2007. So guys, I would present that we're catching up. And I agree, the governor had his formula with what he suggested and recommend that we do, and we certainly listened to that, and we wanted to do what we can. But we are way behind in funding in higher education. Now, whether you feel education is a core function of government or not, that's your priority, that's your choice. But we do want to fund our students. We want to make sure, whether it's a 2-year, whether it's a 4-year, whether you're blue collar, white collar, whether you're from any part of the state, that if you would like to pursue further and get a degree or get a certificate, some way where you can better your life and your family's life, we want to help you any way possible. In South Carolina, y'all, we are funding higher education 50% lower than we are in the state of Georgia. Georgia funds their students 50% more on an FTE basis than we do. North Carolina funds it 125% more than we do. So this small amount, less than 10% of recurring funds that we had to spend this year, is set aside to help families and students back home. I'll end with this, and I don't plan to take many questions, and I can come back up because we've got several of these to go. Like Representative Rutherford mentioned, I am a Gamecock. And there's only 40,000 people in Lexington and Richland County that can vote for me, but at the same time, I represent the entire state. And in this example, as higher education sub-chair, I represent Clemson University and the families and the students that attend there. So I wanted to find out, hey, if we don't allow or invest this funds to Clemson University, tell me what happens in the real world. Tell me what happens to my constituents back home that want to attend Clemson University. Well, first of all, it's going to be a 5% tuition increase. If we don't give them the money, they're going to find it from somewhere, so they're going to go to our constituents to get it. Now, what does that mean? That means every year that individual is going to have to pay $756 more to get that same education, again, because we're not funding at the levels that we had in the past. Now, I would admit Clemson's at 59% in-state students. I wish that was higher. We've got other, Francis Marion, y'all, is 95%, by the way. But 59% is kind of in the ballpark, and I can give you those statistics if you need those. Like you heard earlier from Representative Burns and others, I wish in-state tuition would be higher. But let me tell you what I learned, again, by being on Ways and Means and being fortunate to learn more and hear more. 91% of South Carolina applicants to Clemson University were accepted this past year, whether it be fall, summer, or the bridge program. So, you know, where I come from, 91% was an A. That's pretty good. So I will cut them some slack on that. Let me tell you why there's only 59% in-state students. This is my belief and some testimony we've heard in years past, is because y'all heard of how severely short we are in funding where we used to be. And so if we do not do tuition mitigation to help them, tuition mitigation, y'all, goes directly to in-state students, not to out-of-state. Frankly, I could care less about the out-of-state. I don't represent them, nor do any of y'all, and I think y'all feel the same. But the problem is if we do not keep the in-state tuition down or frozen, and these universities help us to help our families back home, they've got to come up with the money somewhere. So they're either going to raise tuition or, as Mr. Burns mentioned, and as I don't like, they're going to start bringing in more out-of-state tuition. That's just math, y'all. It's math. It costs money to run an institution. Now, we can argue on the amount they need and this, that, and the other, but at the end of the day, if you want your students and families back home to continue to keep education at the cost and affordability where it is right now and not incur more student loans or not be able to pay that check and instead they do not get a degree, well, then you can vote against this. But if you believe in providing an educated workforce, those who are wanting to better themselves, to fulfill these jobs that we need nurses, we need teachers, we have got to get educated to some degree, I would ask you to table this amendment. And if I'm the last speaker, I move to table.
Mr. Ballantyne stakes away. Mr. Ballin moves to table Amendment 4. Who was that, Mr. May? Mr. May requests a roll call to 9 members second. 9 members do. Question is tabling Amendment 4. Roll call is required. Voting on the board is ordered. Have all members wishing to vote voted? Have all members wishing to vote voted? Any objection to closing roll call? Any objection? Hearing none, the clerk close polls, tabulate. Vote of 97-16. House tables Amendment 4. Clerk will read.